Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We're coming to you guys just a little bit late here. Day one of the 2026 NFL draft has just wrapped up a couple hours ago. I had my coverage, Brandon had his coverage, and now we're here to talk a little bit about it to wrap things up before we move on to day two. So, Brandon, good to have you back on, man. Good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be back in here as well, man, on a fun day of draft coverage, man. So,
All right. So, one thing that I want to say is that the NFL strategy to shorten the draft by reducing the amount of time each team had, that seemed to work because in my recollection, day ones typically take like 4 hours. This took less than 3.5. So that was kind of nice. I didn't mind that. I don't think any teams were really suffering for losing that time.
no, I think it was good too. I think it allowed it to have a nice flow to the first round where you felt like you had enough time to kind of talk over picks and think about what had just happened and get rather than you're spending an extra 10 minutes like, when are they getting around to this thing? When are they going to the other side here?
Yeah, although I'm not a huge fan of the TV coverage. I was following the draft on TV. They are way behind the actual coverage because they try to milk every pick. But that's been a thing for a long time. So,
Oh yeah. That's the way they roll. And I think they were trying to elongate at the end because it started going through too fast. So they're like, let's stretch this thing out a little bit.
all right. So let's talk about the day that was. And obviously, this day was about 32 different picks getting made. It was not just about the Seahawks pick. And I want to spend a little bit of time on that first because we went last because we won the Super Bowl. So let's talk about our division rivals here real quick because to me, what our division rivals did was actually the highlight of the day, I have to admit. And that might give away a little bit of what I'm thinking about what the Seahawks did. But number one, the Arizona Cardinals had the chance to take who is, in my opinion, the best player in this draft, and they did not. Their pick came up at 3. Arvell Reese was there. To me, he is the number one player in this draft. And I was like, oh, no, we're going to have to deal with this guy. And they took a running back, a very good running back. I'm not hating on Jeremiah Love, but I got to admit, I'd much rather deal with Jeremiah Love in this division than Arvell Reese for the foreseeable future. So that made me happy personally. I don't know about you, but I preferred that very much.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty silly move by the Arizona Cardinals who have Tyler Algier you signed this offseason. You have Benson that you took on day 2 just a couple of years ago, and then you brought back James Conner again this offseason. And you have holes on that offensive line. You got holes on that team. This is the kind of move to me you make once you have that stuff kind of taken care of if you can, or at least the conditions set up to better maximize them. That team's going to be playing from behind a lot of times. Hard to see them getting the most out of Love then because of that. It just kind of screamed of maybe they weren't sold on a player, and so they just kind of double back down to Love here a little bit. But it's one where, from a Cardinals perspective, I often say these bad organizations are bad organizations for a reason, and that you can see them make moves that are not only dumb in retrospect, but are kind of dumb in the moment.
Yeah. And it would have been one thing if Arvell wasn't there, if they were looking at David Bailey and they had questions about him. And then I could understand that maybe you're like, okay, Bailey can't play the run. He's too light. I don't want to take a linebacker. I don't want to take a safety. So Jeremiah Love would be the best player left at that point. Okay. But for Arvell Reese to be there, I was really surprised that they actually decided to go back. And I was surprised that Reese fell as far as he did, honestly.
I think you got to remember this is a Cardinal team that has taken a run at a guy named Simmons out of Clemson a couple of years ago, similar to Arvell Reese. Is he an edge? Is he an off-ball linebacker? Is he a weapon? They never figured that out. They had another linebacker in recent years that they picked that they played through his first couple of years as an off-ball linebacker, and they've recently moved him to edge. Still not really getting it figured out with him. So they've had kind of 2 of these type of players running through there recently, which have failed them. Now, I don't disagree with you, Brendan. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying this is what happens to, I think, as an organization that's trying to sort of, course correct around these kind of decisions. And this is what this, ends up leading to is you end up passing on a really good player because you're so caught up in these other past players who may or may not be equivalent to this guy. And I think he is better than Simmons. You took Simmons kind of midway through the teens, I think, is where they grabbed him in the first round, which is, this would have been a top 5 pick, but I think that's why they didn't do it. And that's part of why I think this is more of less of them just being head over heels in love with Love and more of it being you're just not maybe loving the other options.
Yeah. So I was happy with that. The Cardinals got a good player. I'm not hating on Jeremiah Love specifically, but definitely preferable to dealing with somebody like Reese to me. So that was good. And then about an hour later, the Rams made what is currently being talked about as the worst pick of this first round. I've been on the internet over the last few hours trying to soak in what people are saying. People are losing their mind about this one. The Los Angeles Rams came up to bat with Kenyon Sadiq on the board, with Mekhi Lemon on the board, with Caden Proctor on the board, I believe, or maybe he went to Miami the pick before, but they had guys they could pick. And they picked Ty Simpson of Alabama, the quarterback. So right away, we can say, okay, not going to be an impact player in 2026 for them because they still have Stafford. We know that the Rams are close to an extension with Stafford. And if they actually do extend him, then you might be in a situation where Ty Simpson doesn't play for several years. And you get through all that, and then you get to the part where Ty Simpson is not that good. So that absolutely thrilled me when the Rams actually took Ty Simpson. I loved that. That was the highlight of the night to me.
Agreed. I think it's by far the worst pick in the draft. And I think what bothers me most if I'm a Rams fan about this pick, beyond the reasons that you mentioned, which are certainly valid reasons and certainly worthy of saying like this alone is probably why we shouldn't do this pick here. Last year, the Atlanta Falcons made a really aggressive trade, a go-for kind of trade to move a future first-round pick to get a pass rusher for this year in Pierce. And I said at the time, this guy's not going to take you over the top. He's not going to make you into even a certain playoff team at this point. And that's the kind of move that this move is. And this is you now really putting yourself in a bad predicament for the next year's draft because of it. And they kind of did with the pick that they ended up giving the Rams back in return. And to me, this is an inverse of that situation, Brendan. And to see if you agree with this, where this is, from a Rams perspective, you could say that the Seahawks and the Rams are the 1-2 teams in the National Football League as far as power rankings go, and that there's a neck and neck thing going on here where it's even Steven. And that if you have a player you're able to add in the first round who can give you immediate impact, that could be enough to being the difference down the stretch, like a Rashid Shaheed had. Like if we didn't have a Rashid Shaheed on our team and we play the Rams, do you think we go to the Super Bowl?
Hard to imagine. Hard to imagine.
Sometimes it's that one extra player that can push you past the finish line. And when I look at them feeling like they're so confident in themselves as to not need that, I think that we might look at the Rams, and the Rams might be looking at this in retrospect going, boy, if that had actually been a player, if that had actually been us going for some reinforcement and insurance at a position, we'd be in better stance for next year. Because like you say, this is about them maximizing what is a very closing Super Bowl window. It's not like it's going to be on forever here.
Right. And to me, that's just the cardinal sin here. This Rams team should be all in trying to win it in 2026. Anything short of winning the Super Bowl is not just a failure for that Rams team this year. It's kind of a complete failure. This is the year. This is it. And to me, taking a quarterback 13th overall when you had, could you imagine Sadiq working with McVay? How annoying that would be for every defense in the league, or even a guy like Mekhi Lemon, like that'd be something else, I think.
Well, to me, the Sadiq one didn't quite make sense because of the Terrace Ferguson pick. It'd be like us taking Sadiq this year after taking Arroyo, where you go, I mean, they already have 15 tight ends on that roster. But to your point on Mekhi Lemon, okay, let's go through this, right? You have the contract negotiations coming up for Puka where he wants to break the bank. Kind of nice to have some insurance in house if he happens to get a little squirrely. I mean, am I going on a ledge to say that maybe Puka, if contract negotiations go sideways, can kind of become a problem, a hold in, or maybe not, but at least that gives you the insurance there if that were to occur or happen, or even an Omar Cooper. If you like him instead, you had an option between the two if you're the Rams there. And to me, that makes them more dangerous for 2026. They've got two guys in Puka and in Devontae Adams that I think are kind of high injury risks. Puka had those injury risks going back to Washington. You know about that with that leg. He's a guy that's already said he's not planning to play past 30 years old. Devontae Adams had his hamstring blowout last year, and he is getting very old. All the more reason to me that you got to have some of that health, that insurance for the receiver position, and the value was right to take the receiver there from a Ram perspective, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I don't get that one at all. And if Stafford signs that extension and holds up, there's a universe where Simpson doesn't get to play until year 4. And I know that that's not a complete non-starter like Jordan Love. That's what happened with him, and that's worked out pretty decently. It happened with Aaron Rodgers, but that's not really what you want to be doing, I think, if you're this Rams team.
Well, I like how you mentioned the Packers here, Brendan, because at Aaron Rodgers' situation, why Aaron Rodgers was so mad was that if you had gone with a different player than Love, if you gave me another wide receiver at that time, and how close that Packer team came at that time for where they were at, Could that have pushed us past that finish line? And that's that same kind of representation I'm talking about the Rams here, where yes, you are that team in that position. I know I've beaten your eardrums to death with this. You're a team that's in 4 different states. You've got to isolate what state you're in to know what kind of moves you make. When you're elite, you don't make the moves of a team that's ascending. You don't make the moves of a team that's rebuilding. This is the kind of move that's of that nature to me. And this is a team that could have used that one extra player to push past. And I think it's going to be one that they're going to live to regret.
Yeah, and I don't know if you got to see the video footage of the Rams McVay-Snead press conference after the pick, but McVay doesn't look happy at all. And I think it's very clear that this is not his pick.
Yeah, I think that he was definitely, and it does seem like Snead does, like, unlike, the Lynch-Shanahan dynamic, where it can sometimes seem like Shanahan's kind of running things a little bit in there a bit, or has a heavy amount of sway. It does kind of feel like Snead is a guy that's like, no, I'm running this. You could hear it even. Remember the Byron Murphy behind the scenes stuff that they had a couple of years ago between those two guys, where you could see McVay pounding the table for Byron Murphy and Snead being like, I've never been reckless my whole life, is I think what the quote that he made at the time. And it's like, you could see even in that moment that, these guys aren't exactly where McVay can just come in and say, I want you to do this, and he'll do it. It's kind of like, no, I got to be sold on that to be done. And I agree. I think that there's a little bit of maybe disharmony here on this pick from them.
Yeah, and I've wondered before, and I know he just signed an extension, but we also know that doesn't mean anything. If when Stafford leaves, does McVay leave as well? Does he just say, I don't want to go through this again? Because this is the thing I talked about in my video about this Simpson pick. McVay has a very high standard for a quarterback, and we know this because Jared Goff was not good enough for him. And looking at Ty Simpson, for me personally, I don't think there's any way Simpson will ever be as good as Jared Goff was in his prime. And Goff was not some great quarterback, but I look at Ty Simpson, I see someone who's smaller, who has a weaker arm, who is, I think at best case scenario, he's a Brock Purdy, but more likely he's Mac Jones. Yeah. I read one mock draft earlier today. I don't know where they had him going, but the description of him was Daniel Jones without the physical tools.
That's good.
That, I mean, that's, I don't really know what to say about that. But point I'm trying to make is here that's that's just not the guy. I think that McVay will be just as frustrated with Simpson, if not more so, than he was with Goff.
Yeah, you touched on, I think, exactly the right point here, because you have Goff, who is not that he doesn't have some ability that he brings to the table, but McVay rightly assessed with him that this is not enough. This is not enough to get me to go win a Super Bowl. And with Ty Simpson, whether you're high or you're low on him, even the biggest people that are super highest guys on him would admit that there are some limitations for him being a first round pick here, especially a top half of the first round pick here, that there are physical limitations. He is not hypermobile. He does not have a big arm. He does not have great size. There is an injury situation that had popped up from this 1 year that he's had of starting. And the one part of this that they always tell us now is that one of the big things you want to look for in these quarterbacks for success to the NFL level is a multitude of starts at the college level, which is what he's going to be missing. Just another thing that you throw on top of the pile here on this one.
Right. So that was great. Loved that. Loved it. 49ers traded down a couple times, so they never picked. We'll see what they do tomorrow. I think they have the first pick tomorrow, so we'll find out pretty quickly. Probably going to take a corner, but them and the Bills did not like this draft very much. They kept trading down. They were playing hot potato with their picks.
They really were. It was kind of making it surprising to me why Seattle wasn't able to take advantage, because it did seem like right as we were kind of getting the last 5-6 picks leading up to us, everybody was bouncing around and jumping up here, pulling back again, bouncing back up here, pulling back up, pulling back down, bounce. It's like, here we go. John's going to be getting something here. Yeah.
I felt it coming too, but so then you get to the Seattle pick, and we're going to get into this a little bit here, but it was the thing that had been telegraphed for a couple months now. If you've been following the Seahawks for the last few months, this has been kind of the telegraphed pick. And Jadarian Price, Notre Dame running back, I believe, I could be wrong, he is the first player in NFL history to get drafted in the first round having played college football without making a single start in college football. So making history here. I don't know if it's the kind of history you want, but at least he doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body, I guess. We can spin it that way.
Yeah, he's not going to be one of those Alabama backs where they've they got already like 1,000 touches on their back as they're coming into the league. So you are getting some freshness there from him in that part. And, you know, when you are the number 2 back to the guy that's taken as high as any running back has been taken in recent modern history at the running back position, you probably have a little bit more room for understanding that this isn't your typical backup running back. And we do have there is a little bit of a history in NFL history. We got the old Cadillac Williams, Ronnie Staley draft, where one was, I think, taken in the first round. I think the other one was taken in the second round. It was a 2-man backfield from Auburn, if I'm not mistaken, back then.
And
so it has happened before.
You know who else was in that backfield, by the way?
Who else?
Brandon Jacobs.
Oh, wow. Let's go. Let's go.
He had to transfer out because he never got the ball, but he was there. It was a 3-headed backfield for a little bit there.
That's a hell of a backfield, man. A hell of a backfield. So, you know, I don't necessarily hold. I've got some of my little picadillos with the Jadarian Price, but I don't as far as the starter thing goes. I think that's a little bit of I get why it's a interesting factoid. Don't get me wrong there, but it's a little bit like, yeah, but Love's in front of him. It's, you know, it's not like there's just this, you know,
unique situation.
Yeah. Highly unique situation.
Well, he's loyal too, right? Because most running backs would have transferred out to some place where he would have started. So something to be said for that.
I think that's a part of the factor, especially the NIL, because it's all the much more easier to be a gun for hire. And if you're not the starter, to just go bounce around rather than just kind of, hey, no, I like this place. I'm going to stay in this and trust in the process.
All right. So Jadarian Price here. We've got Notre Dame. So Fighting Irish. He's going to be 22 when the season starts on September 1st. So still pretty young. He is 5'11", which is average for a running back. He is light for a running back at 203 pounds. Although by modern standards, I would say that's kind of more typical these days. Still a little light. Arms, average. Big hands. The testing, pretty good 40. Ran a sub 4.5, just barely. Pretty good. Not eye-popping. The 10-yard split, not really what you want to see there. The 1.61 is not going to make you feel great. The jumps are okay. He is a lighter player, so you would expect him to be a little bit more athletic. So he was productive at Notre Dame these last 2 years, 18 touchdowns, averaged 6.1 yards per carry. So there is good stuff here. There's also some stuff to be concerned about. So give me what you think of Jadarian Price just to start off the conversation.
From a lot of Seattle Seahawks fans' perspective, it was very important for the Seattle Seahawks to be able to bring back in big plays. I believe that Kenneth Walker had 50 runs last year of 10 yards or more, I want to say. So you were looking to, from some Hawk fans' perspective on this, they were very strongly of the feeling that you needed to, and seems the team would have echoed this with the selection, that you needed to replace some of that big play production within the run game. And so with this player, there is no player in this draft, and maybe even above Love in the respect of hitting big play percentage. There's no running back in this draft that's going to have a big play percentage of their carries and runs than this guy. Some of that also comes from the sample size of being the number 2 back and not having the number 1 amount of carries, right? But that still goes to show you that when you do give this guy a hole, when you do give him the opportunity to be able to hit something, he's going to maximize that to the utmost. He can house it. He's got that sort of, I got kick returner background. So you give me the open field and you give me that lane and I can use my vision, and vision's a big part of what he does, which you can't test as easily, vision, but vision is what you get from him. And what's nice with him is he's a vision as a one-cut runner. So when he's not going to be a walker guy, this is an antithesis of a walker guy. It's not a dancer. This is a guy that's going to make smart decisions as far as his reads and then get downhill to that read really fast. And that's really suits really well to the outside zone scheme as far as a running back that's wired that way to run in that sort of style. The 1-6-10-1 split and a little bit of where he's at weight wise gets you a little concerned, because you'd like to be him at 200 pounds. You'd like to be more around in that 155, 153. You'd like to have a little bit more lightning quickness to them if they're not in that 215 pound range. I think he does play heavier. I think he got down to 203 at the combine, Brendan, in order to run the fastest 40 time. But with that said as well, if he's 161 at 203, Brendan, what is he at 215?
Yeah. We're getting to Chris Carson territory here pretty quickly, right?
Right, but with Carson, I like that, because with Carson, that's an inside guy though. That's an A/B gap guy.
Exactly.
And so like this isn't an A&B gap guy. This is a guy that you were trying to get to the outside zone and have him hit these big plays to the edge. So I think maybe his speed is probably faster. I think the Hawks, if they were in front of me right now, would tell me that they have GPS times from Notre Dame, which shows that his play speed is faster. These are just the little things that give you a little bit of concern when you look at him as far as the give and take of him as a running back. I think pass pros got a little bit of a room to grow there to a major degree. He is not Jonah Coleman as a pass protector in this draft. And so you get the big play. You get a guy that should fit in well with Charbonnet in that rotation and the rotation of backs. I don't think he's a 20 carry guy back. I think he's probably that, get him 10 to 15 touches a game type back, but he should have a really good chance for success in that manner. And he's going to an offense that's really loaded up, returning a lot of starters, offensive line in place, ready to rock. And what we know about maximizing running backs, Brendan, is that if you want to maximize running backs, have that line, have that quarterback, have that defense getting offenses off the field, have a competent passing attack so you can remain balanced and not allow the defense to just load up the box in your running game. You've got all those parameters to be able to give Jadarian Price now to allow him the most success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when you look at Price, most of the stuff that I like about him is the cerebral elements to his game. He's smart. He knows how to pace a run. He knows how to be patient. He improvises well. He's a reliable one cut and go guy. I like his vision. I think the cerebral element of football is very, very strong with him. So that stuff is the stuff that I see that I like. So that's good. I think that gives him at least a decent floor. But I also see a guy who has a little bit of limits in the talent area. I think that he's, decently fast, but not super fast. I think he's decently explosive, but not super explosive. I know people are pointing at that stat where he had the highest percentage of big runs, but we got to remember he is spelling the best running back in the country at Notre Dame, and he's playing behind that great offensive line. So there are some things going on there that are kind of giving him a head start on stuff like that. So I got to curb that enthusiasm just a little bit here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point of it, and then he can have some deficiencies in his game and still be very successful here in Seattle. So just to have some of these things that are maybe you like maybe a little bit more of a fuller meal deal when you're taking a running back at this spot. And I think that the value part of this is a real big factor into this where you're selecting him too. And for the kind of player he is, I had Walker and Charbonnet with higher projectable grades as far as the players they were than what I have for Jadarian. Yet you're picking him higher. And so there is a little bit to that to me on it, but there's definitely a good chance for him to be able to hit the ground running here and for them to be able to really maximize this rookie contract with him here, which they weren't able to do with Walker and Charbonnet because they hadn't taken care of these parameters at the forefront to make sure you're maximizing these running backs to the ultimate, especially when you get a talented one.
Yeah. And you mentioned the third down thing a little bit earlier. He gives you very little on third down. He has 10 total catches over the last 2 seasons combined. That's not his game, and he doesn't block very well. So you're getting very little there. So you're going to need one of your other running backs to be that. Now, Charbonnet can do that when he gets back, but he's not back yet, and he may not be back for a little while. So Halani can probably do it. I think Halani could probably be pretty good at that. Halani has been praised for his blocking in the past, so that's probably the play. But it's not – I don't love the idea of taking a running back at 32 knowing that he's going to be a non-factor on third down.
I don't either, especially like you just said with Charbonnet, you're not sure when you're getting him back. I think definitely Hololani can hold the line on this stuff, and maybe McIntosh can come into play because certainly he has a third down back skill set that would work nice. So you can kind of get by on this, and Charbonnet is very good as a third down back when he's been in there as a blocker. But it is just another little part of this is you're trying to build up these picks and trying to assess these picks. You're trying to take into account all things, not just go, well, is it just he's a big play guy? That right there is our only reason that. What is everything he brings to the table? What's the pluses? What's the minuses? What are we getting in full as this player goes? And that is part of his story is what goes on in pass pro. And kind of like we saw with Walker, it's like the guys that aren't necessarily particularly great at pass pro in college don't typically turn into, even if they're hard workers, really good ones at the pro level. It's usually going to carry over in some way from one to the other.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is going to help us because we already have Shaheed for the next couple of years, but he's also a good kickoff guy. He had 3 kickoff return touchdowns, I think, at Notre Dame. So we are going to have the deepest well of kickoff returners in this league. So kick it in the end zone, people. If you're playing the Seahawks, just kick it in the end zone. Give us the ball at the 35 and move on.
I agree. You've with the move, you've reinforced that kick return because I think you want to have Shaheed back there doing it. I've heard some mention about, well, now we'll have Shaheed go to become a full-time receiver now and we can move him to do this. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Shaheed, part of why you paid him the contract you did is for what he does as a returner. And he may be the best one in the entire National Football League. Whereas Jadarian will probably be like a good returner. You've got the best one in the National Football League. You probably lean on that one.
Yeah, and Price may be running back 1 by the time the season starts. Running back 1 is more valuable than wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, especially in this offense. So Price may end up being more indispensable. And that's another thing about this pick that I do acknowledge. Jadarian Price is going to have the opportunity to have a big impact on this team as a rookie, probably more impact than other players you could have taken. Like, and I will admit, I wanted these guys more. Jermod McCoy, TJ Parker, Avion Terrell, Caden McDonald, Brandon Cisse, Zion Young. Price will probably be on the field and impacting the team more as a rookie than those guys would have. I concede that.
Yeah, as far as you're talking about, to maximize 26, to go and repeat, and to have guys that can give you the best maximization for your next year's roster, to actually have productivity on the field, you're 100% right. And I think you were facing a little bit of that, the upside for the player down the road. And that's where we can get into, I think, a real fun discussion on this in regards to, value and what's the better way to roll. And, in my opinion, when you looked at that first round, for instance, I think you saw a lot of teams reaching for need, especially when it came to the offensive line and especially when it came to the tackle position. And you could laugh at those teams and you could point at those teams and you can say, this is not what's going to lead you to a successful draft. You might have a player that goes out there and is able to play for you, but this is not the approach and the pathway that gets you there. And to me, you had an opportunity at 32 here. Let's just remove Jadarian from the puzzle of other players you could have gotten with a little bit more of that higher upside to them, albeit back to your point, not necessarily getting as much for 26 then, but that you're essentially zigging where everyone else is zagging. The rest of the NFL wants to spend this first round reaching for need, not living in the pocket of value. And there's some teams that made some exceptions here. I would say it wasn't everybody, but there was a lot of that. You go the other direction with it, Brendan. You did what you did with Riley Mills last year. Not only with Riley Mills did you not have really a place for him to be fitted in there, but then also you had him coming off the ACL. And it was like, well, but you were in a position to do that. You could get away with that because you had that grade where you did on him. So I think that there is a good argument to be made about better maximizing the value for this pick without it having to be about crapping on Jadarian Price, more of it just being about, was there other players there that gave you higher value, higher upside, albeit you might have to have waited a little bit longer to get around to those guys.
Right. We'll talk more about this later, but imagine if you draft Jermod McCoy and he gets past the injury. You've got probably one of the best corners in the draft, along with Witherspoon and Eman Warrior in the same secondary. It's just, that's going to carry you way more than anything Price will give you, I think. Like that's just absolutely sick that you had a chance to get Jermod McCoy at 32.
I believe I agree with you on this, and we don't know the medicals, or maybe the knee's just super jacked up and they're like, this thing's never recovering right. So that part does make it hard to say on that. But whether it's a McCoy, whether it's an Avion Terrell, whether it's a variety of different guys that were there who have that kind of upside, to me, the running back position has been proven out here in these last few years. I think you're in the same place of this, where we've had an opportunity over the last 10 to 15 years to see a transition in this sport. And that if you went back to the early 2000s, running backs ruled the roost still. It was the end of their ruling the roost days. And then the transition became, hey, let's run a smarter football team. Let's understand that rather than finding the magical running back who will save us offensively and fix all, we got to get everything up in front right for this guy, and that the running back talent's actually pretty close, even when you get into deep drafts, that we come to find that this stuff's close because there's so many talented ones, because everyone wants to be a running back when they're in Pee Wee leagues. So let's take that into account. And if we get the rest of the stuff right, we can have a competent, cogent, successful rushing attack without it having to be us putting a lot of assets into it to make that happen. And I do like that John's not paying the price here. Like with Walker, I still think that I'm okay if you want to give up the draft capital. I think that this is a market opportunity where you're okay. We're going to put resources into it, but we're not going to spend the money on it. And I can wrap my head around that part completely with it, because that is a place where I think you're doing something a little different than other teams would do here, where if they're drafting high, they'll, like, if Jeremiah Love does well on this first rookie contract for the Cardinals, they'll come back and pay him again all the money. You know what I mean? Like they're that type of organization that would do that. And you're kind of not. I like and appreciate that about the Hawks in this respect of things.
All right, we'll get to Super Chats right after this message from our joint sponsor over at Prize Picks. If you like sports, the best way to make them better and more exciting is using Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks, all you got to do is pick more or less on your favorite players' projections and build lineups with a few taps. It's the daily fantasy stuff, but it's made super easy over there. Whatever sport you're into, give it a shot. And right now, Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All you have to do is use promo code HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far. It makes this daily fantasy thing very easy, and it makes watching the games way more exciting. Be sure to check out the social feeds feature so you can share lineups with your friends and tail partners or even fade their picks. Right now, Prize Picks is offering odds on the NFL draft. You have who's going to go where, what each team is going to do, how many of each position is going to go in each round, and so on and so on. Get on over to Prize Picks. Take advantage of that. So download Prize Picks today, America's #1 sports app, and remember to use the promo code HMA. And remember, always gamble responsibly. All right. Welcome back. So let's take a look at some of these super chats. 206 Remy with the 2. We need a corner tomorrow. We need to nail it. I would love a corner at some point tomorrow as well.
I think corner and safety stand at probably the forefront of where you might be, looking to target. And there's some good value too with that need there, because there's still some really good corners and there's still some really good safeties in this day too.
Yeah, McCoy will be gone soon, I'm sure, unless his medicals are just the worst thing on the planet. But Terrell, Cisse, they'll probably be gone too. But Colton Hood, I don't know. It seems like there's a little bit of a weird vibe around him right now. Who else do I have here? Keith Abney will probably be there. I do like him. He's a little bit small, but I do like him. Traydon Stukes, I know he might be a safety, but there are options here. There are options. Even if you want to do the D'Angelo Pons thing, I'm not going to object too hard. I didn't want him too early, but if you get a Pons at 64, I can live with that. And it's a risk.
He's able to play on the outside?
Not really, but I can understand. I don't think it's impossible. I'm not going to say that it can't be done. I'm going to say I would bet against it, but I also don't want to bet against Mike McDonald if he thinks he can do it.
I think that you always can fall back on the safety with Pons. So I think that there's always that too with him, but that does give me, I'm just a little worried with him on the outside at that size length.
I am too. Believe me, I am, but it's one of those things where, it's like Ruben Bain with the arms, right? It's like you look at that and you go, okay, I part of me wants to just ignore the possibility of him being good because of these arms, but I watch him play and I'm like, I think he's going to be good. Yeah.
It's fair. I mean, he's the kind of player the tape does pop with Pons. There's no doubt about it. And he tackles like a demon for his size. So, it is the really only question with him. It's not anything to do with his player's ability.
Mm-hmm. So there will be going to be corners there. Hopefully we can get the right one. I do wonder, do the Seahawks take Chris Johnson if Miami doesn't snipe them? Because there was a lot of buzz that he was the other guy they coveted.
Yeah. Falk, I wonder about too, with Keldrick Falk, if he had fallen and Tennessee didn't jump up in front of us in that spot. It's very possible. Yeah. We were hearing a lot of connection of Johnson to the Hawks. A lot.
Yeah. For whatever reason, over the last week, every person on draft Twitter just hated Keldrick Falk. Something happened, and it made everybody think that he's garbage. And I don't know why.
I think it's a lack. What I tend to find with this is the lack of imagination on people. Like they look at the tape, they look at the production, and they go, I don't, he didn't have as good a production. And what is he? Is he kind of between? It's like, well, he's 20 and a half years old, number one. Number two, I've been making this point. If you think about this, Brendan, imagine you're a 20 and a half year old kid playing in the SEC and your team's moving you inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside. And we've seen this with a few players through the years, right? Remember Keon White was this way coming out of Georgia Tech, where it's like, you just kind of wondered on these guys, like, what if you just put him as an edge full time and let him rip and roar there and let him develop there, especially as a 20-year-old kid, not as a 23-year-old guy, not as a 24-year-old guy, but it's still just that youngster there who's still learning the ropes in the toughest conference in college football. I think that's where you could really do that math with him, where it's like, don't get so caught up on that stuff. When you turn on the tape, he's flashing. He's going to grow into his grown man strength, and that body and the way he's built, you guys are built like that.
Yeah, I liked him too. I never stopped believing, and I think the Titans got a good one. And they need the good one too, because I don't know what the heck happened with that Carnell Tate pick.
That was a little bit the strange one for me too. I was kind of like, I think especially the Giants were probably punching some air on that one as well.
Yeah.
That one came down.
True to the Blue, thank you for the $2 with this super sticker. We can't see what it is because of StreamYard, but I'm sure it was a very nice one.
Thank you there, True Dad. You're awesome, brother.
Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for the $5. People are speculating more and more that McVay might be out when Stafford is out. The evidence of this is adding up. Well, sign me up for that timeline. Get him out of here.
That would at least explain why you'd have this divergence that would seem to be almost obvious here between Schneid and McVay on the loving of this pick, because McVay he's not a guy with much of a poker face. So it's like you're going to see his emotions on his sleeve a little bit with this. And I did feel that a little bit there, which to Jeffrey's point, that does kind of make you wonder on this a little bit. He's always got a big contract waiting with the television networks, does McVay, anytime he wants to go take that deal.
Yeah. And again, it's just clearly he feels like in order to do what he needs to do, he needs an elite quarterback. And it's hard to get an elite quarterback. It's going to be really, really hard. Like back in 2021, he was able to go up to Les Snead and be like, look, whatever you have to do to get me something better than Goff, do it, or I'm going to retire today. Do it. I don't care what you give up. And he did it, but you can't just will an elite quarterback out of the ether every time you want one.
No. Well, and then to your point, then what happens when you pick one and then you get back, let's say we get to next year, the Bengals fall on their face. Stafford says, I want to retire. Burrow says, hey, I want to get out of here. And you got an opening there from a Ram perspective, but now Simpson's here. You got him on the books. You can't move him because his bonus money is going to be sitting on books. So you can't just move him to Cincinnati unless you want to eat a bunch of dead money to do that. And maybe that's a way you can pull that off that time. But I think it makes it harder versus just having your pure picks that you could throw them at that point and not flinch in the least versus telling them, okay, we got to give you picks and then you have to take this quarterback too for the value to be built right. And that's where maybe they prevented themselves from making that kind of Stafford-like move into the future because of this, on top of maybe Simpson not being the best of options for them.
Yeah, I just see Mac Jones for the most part. He seems like Mac Jones to me. And I think Mac was actually a little bit bigger and had a little bit of a better arm.
He did. Yes, Mac was bigger, and Mac's the arm is at least equivalent, and it comes down to if you're going 0 to 100 on arm strength, Ty Simpson is going to be in the 80s.
Just not good. Well, good for us, I guess. At least I believe.
Hey, it's great for us. Yeah.
Jeffrey, thank you for the $10. My biggest issue with Price being our pick is all national media guessed right about it, and they never guess right for Hawks. Makes me think we leaked. Also, he has some total bust potential. And this kind of drills down to my primary feeling about this pick. And, you know, there's a very clear reason why all the national media kept giving us Jadarian Price, because it felt obvious because we didn't have a running back good enough to replace Ken Walker. But when you get into territory like that, it's trouble. And I'm kind of annoyed that we put ourselves in a situation where we felt like we just had to take a running back. And that's kind of what it feels like happened here. I don't know any other way to put it. I don't think this is as bad as LJ Collier or Jermaine Ifedi, but I do think the same mentality that led you to those two guys got you to this.
I think that this is a very fair critique of the situation. I think that there have been picks in the past I've had problems with, and when I pull back on the thread of those picks, it's oftentimes come back to that it's really got so much a smell of need to the pick. And when you talk about the media just zeroing in on this selection and saying, well, it's just got to be that, and it starts to become this, well, they have to do that because they got to fill this hole. Well, then it becomes almost purely for need as much. And then you start to wonder how much of this is you as a Seattle Seahawks front office driven by just the love for Jadarian versus the need of the running back position and the lack of other alternatives. We know that they've reached out for Breece Hall. We know they've reached out for Devon Achane. So this come about because those doors got shut in your face and now you're down to limited options. It doesn't then mean that Jadarian can't be successful with it. It just means that there's a process in play that, to me, 3 years ago, Brendan, you'd made a real great course correction. It's the definable course correction that John Schneider made for why you just went back and won a Super Bowl. And that says that you left the Legion of Boom era. You had that kind of need approach that you leaned into on draft picks. LJ Collier, you mentioned, for instance. Why did you do that pick? Because you lost your edge rushers. You knew that you needed edge rush help because all you had signed, I think, was Ziggy Ansah by that point. So even though there had been like 16, 17 edges taken in that first round, you still took Collier because you were desperate at that point. And it was obvious you were desperate at that point, and the pick didn't work out because of that. And that's what happens with need picks, is that though you're reaching for need and thinking you're filling a hole, you oftentimes don't end up actually filling that need because the process that took you to picking the player was kind of somewhat a little bit broken there. And so that's what I worry about with this one. Doesn't mean that he can't be really good and really successful here. It just means that Seattle has had such a great process the last 3 years in how they've picked time and time again. You went for a Byron Murphy when you had a Jadarian Reed and a Leonard Williams on the roster. You went for a Jackson Smith-njigba because you had a Tyler Lockett and a DK Metcalf. I can pull those deals back and go, you've made that pick because you loved that player, just pure and simple. That was the reason you went for it. And that's why it was really easy to understand why you kind of went that way. I don't know as much on this one because of some of that pull of what was going on there on the other side of it, with there being, you just couldn't find any other answers. You're looking at not a deep running back draft. So if you don't go now, can you get later? You start to operate in that fear-based kind of model a little bit. And I think when you start to operate as an organization a little bit fearfully, it can kind of lead you down into some places where you make some not great decisions.
Yeah. And the word that I keep coming back to here is unambitious. This pick just feels kind of unambitious. And that's illustrated by the fact that the national media gave us Price over and over and over and over again, because they're not covering one team. They're covering 32 teams. They don't have the bandwidth to cover every team in close detail. So they just go, oh, this team lost Ken Walker, replaced him with a career backup from Green Bay, so we give them the best running back left. And in their mind, that's Jadarian Price. And that's why I call it unambitious. I don't think the pick is out and out bad. Like, they've made picks that I thought were bad before. Like, I think this pick is better than like the D. Eskridge pick. I think it's better than the Jordan Brooks pick.
Yes.
I think it was better than Collier. I don't remember what I thought of Collier when we took him, but I remember thinking like, this is a second round player at best. So I wasn't super into that.
This is better. I had a third round grade on Collier coming out. So this is better.
Right. And also we understand this is a bad draft. We had the last pick in the first round. There isn't a lot they can do to upset us on the level of what they did in some of those previous drafts, because there was some pretty choice cuts of meat available when you did what you did in those previous drafts. That isn't necessarily the case here.
No, there were more egregious things here a couple of years ago in some of those moves you made. This is a much more of a minor side of that versus those other ones, which were a lot more like, wait, what? What are we doing? Wait, what? Eskridge in the second round? No. Yeah,
I hadn't scouted Eskridge at all, because I did scout receivers that year, I remember, but I scouted big receivers because I thought that's what Waldron would want. And I was like, Eskridge is too small. There's no way he's going to want that. And, oh, well.
I had a chance to watch him. I was very surprised on draft day. And that was one, to your point about alternatives and clear better alternatives. Well, there isn't a Creed Humphrey necessarily that's like, oh, there's this amazing potential all-pro player you're passing on that you could know of in the moment you're passing on, like we did at the time with Creed.
Right. And yeah, but I will say, like, if you want to be ambitious, like Jermod McCoy, who probably would have been a top 10 player if he didn't get hurt, you take that guy at 32, like, that's ambitious. And maybe the ambition would have blown up in your face, but at least it would have been like, I would have respected the hell out of that. Even if it blew up, I would have been like, yeah, that guy could be a all-pro in this league. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, I think to have the opportunity to get the most talented cornerback in the draft at number 32, that is value. And that we're in a position to be able to wait. And that I think a lot of teams in this draft, when they look at McCoy, let's just take for granted, Brendan, the knee surgery that will happen has a good prognosis for his health returning to good, but that it's going to take you time. Okay, so even if it's a year, even if it's this year out, that I'm getting him back into by next year, and I get the best cornerback in this draft to wait for that, much like in the same with Riley Mills, that you come out and getting a top 50 player that you get in the fourth round. To me, that's tremendous value. And that's where you're running your draft right, when you're kind of operating by that, as much as you can operate that way, because the pull to need is always there in every draft. It's always there on every pick. That pull just naturally tugs at you at all times. And you really got to fight up it as a team to fight against that drive to do it, because it's just so easy to fall into it.
Jeffrey, thank you for the $5. We should have picked a corner. We have no need at running back. Our success running the ball was our offensive line improvement, not our running back talent. Price is slow and small. I wouldn't say we have no need at running back, but I do kind of like where you're going with this comment, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I think the spirit of your comment definitely is where I find myself at on this, where it's just, again, we've had some success with later running backs. Thomas Rawls came in here and lit it up. Chris Carson came in here and did really well. Like, you've had success there. We've alternatively done quite a bit of picking in the early rounds in John Schneider's time here. Robert Turbin, Christian Michael, Rashad Penny. These are not exactly glowing success stories of you taking running backs really early on and bucking the trend of what the analytic folks tell you should be doing. So it's again comes back to, what we know about what they tell us tends to have success, what we know has been the track record of success here when it comes to picking these kind of backs this early. And that's where there is a little bit of that hesitancy to that, which I think is fair in a critique. It doesn't mean we want to go overboard and that this is it's not an atrocious pick. It's not awful. Like Brendan said, we can find a variety of other picks in recent years where you're like, oh, this was much worse. So doesn't make it a purely simple bet. It's just that you do look at all of this in the draft and trying to assess how your team's operating and how smart they're being and where they're taking the players in the right spaces. Something I've been saying about this, and I was saying on the prior show earlier tonight, it's like last year, you go up and you grab Eamon Wari because you just like, we need that Hamilton piece. And you're not operating by value. You just love the player. So you take him in the Zabel pick. And then Zabel goes off the board at 20. And now you're coming back in the second round and you're taking, right? So like, because you operated by a value-based model last year and you put the value in the right space for where those guys were going to go, you could get them both.
Right.
Like both of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know if Price is slow. I don't think he's fast, but I wouldn't call him slow. Like he's not as fast as Ken Walker, but I don't think he's slow.
No, I think I think the GPS times, like I said, I think if the Hawks were to tell us, because the 161 is not, that is, you showed the percentage is 30 percentile. And he does seem to be better than that on tape to me. I would guess that the GPS times are what Seattle's going off of here with him, where it's like the GPS time actually comes down to more of the 155-ish when he's on tape and the ball's in his hand and people are chasing after him. Not all guys are track guys. So, that very well could be the case with him.
Jeffrey, thank you for the 5. McCoy drops to pick 64. I'll throw a dancing girl party in John's honor, and the Price pick will be forgiven. If he drops to 64, that leg must have gotten amputated.
Yeah, that cartilage is holding on by a very thin thread, my friend.
Yeah, maybe they'll invent like the technology to repair it or something. Maybe like Sam Altman will come up with some way to regrow cartilage, and we're good.
Send him off to Switzerland. That's all we got to do.
Mm-hmm. Like, did you ever see that movie Upgrade a few years ago?
I did, yes.
Yeah, it could be like that. You put a chip in his back, and then he's just ready to go. Who cares about that cartilage? We're good.
Yeah, power.
But yeah, if McCoy's there at 64, well, I mean, we got a big problem, but that would be pretty exciting. And there are a couple other things at 64 that could happen theoretically that would get me pretty over this pick, whatever disappointment I have. Like if Colton Hood is there at 64, I'm like, okay, that's a guy I would have taken at 32 and felt fine about. So it's like flip the picks and you're in decent shape.
Yeah. And I think that really it's just, even with some of the critique on this, it just doesn't get stuck in my craw like some of the other ones I've had through the years. I mean, even last year, going back to the Arroyo and Milrow pick, that was made with those. I just, even with those ones, I think I'd have even more issue with than this one. For where those stood. So it's one where like just putting this in the right measure. Cause I think sometimes when we talk about this, it can come off that it's like, it's not, let's get into nuance. Let's get into the shades of gray on this where it's not something that we're looking at. It's like some awful thing here, especially where you've been in other places. There's plenty of good here, and he's going to got a good chance for success and a good chance to be productive in this offense.
Yeah. It's like watching a Liam Neeson movie on Netflix, like a recent Liam Neeson movie. It's you're not going to be angry about it. You're not going to feel like you completely wasted your time, but
Yeah, there's some good moments in there.
Yeah, he's a trucker driving on a nice road. He's a snowplow driver, and he needs to kill a bunch of people for some reason, and it's okay.
Yeah, a couple good set pieces,
Lower, thank you for the $2. My show is on.
Let's go. He's talking about us, brother.
Okay, I thought he might have been talking about like Matlock or something, because Matlock comes on pretty late. Right? Or what was that other show, the courtroom show that was famous back in the day? God, there were a lot of them.
It's the guy's name one. It's the name. You're thinking of the guy's name one. Yeah, it's the name. I forget what it is. Something done. I can't
remember the name, but it's the one that kind of made the whole idea famous of like berating a witness into saying something stupid and made people think that's actually how courtrooms work. When no, that's definitely not how it works.
Yeah, no, they were definitely having some fun with it on that one. Matt, what was it? I think Matlock was like the
Perry Mason.
There we go. Thank you guys. God, that was going to drive me crazy.
Yeah. The Warhammer, thank you for the $1.99. I'd like Price if it wasn't for the available talent. That's kind of where I am too. Like, even
Yeah.
if you're not into McCoy, TJ Parker, man, I think that guy would be perfect for the McDonald defense, or Avion Terrell, or Caden McDonald, or even if you want to move Emmanuel Pregnon over to right guard, that would be fun. Brandon Cisse, Zion Young, Anthony Hill. We both love Anthony Hill. That would have been,
Yeah.
that would have driven people crazy, but me and Brando would have loved it.
I just think it's and it's in conjunction with how you've operated in recent years. Our approach here is not one where it's like, well, you guys are just wanting to do what you want them to do. No, I just want them to stay consistent with what they've done the past 3 years. That's been the exact road that's taking you to a Super Bowl championship. I don't want to go to an off ramp here. I want to stay on this freeway in full, So I agree. I think the same way on that Warhammer. It's really not about price individually. It's just about where you're taking guys and grabbing guys in the right spots. Like I try to say with that Zabel, even Wari example, it's about that you can sometimes end up getting two players in a thing where you only end up with one going the other direction that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's the first round pick, and I know this is not a good draft, but most of what you do that really counts in a draft is in the first. They can do great tomorrow, but it won't cancel out what they did in the first. Now they can mitigate it heavily depending on what happens, but this was the valuable pick that you had in this draft.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think if you go in tomorrow and you hit your 2 value points in the second, third round with those selections, I think you're coming out of the draft feeling fine. That you do look at it and go, hey, though, you stayed for the most part in value. That's worth lauding. That's worth celebrating. And that's worth feeling good about that draft. And so they've got that opportunity to do that tomorrow. But in the same respect too, they can also drift into need a little bit. And like, okay, now we didn't get our cornerback now. So now we've got to take a cornerback with the next second round. Well, we didn't get a safety then with the first 2 picks. So now you got to take a safety at third round. Well, now you've gone with all 3 of your picks being driven to need then. And that's not something we want to see at all.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, now we have to sign Jadeveon Clowney or Dante Fowler or whoever when this is over. And, I'm a little more amenable to that because that's not going to be some uber pricey thing. It's going to be cheap, but still, it's one of those things where it just kind of feels like you slotted this stuff into a pretty narrow box.
Yeah. Which wouldn't be bad on the surface of it if we had a track record of success of teams taking that approach. If I could look at teams in recent years who go, that's how we're going to go with our draft approach. And wow, look at the success story we've had off the back of that. Let's just remove Seattle from this and just look at team by team throughout the league. It'd be much easier to get on board with that as a kind of a process, but it just unfortunately doesn't return out those results.
Mm-hmm. Nolan, thank you for the 5. There must be a plan. I wish it was more obvious to my limited football mind. Still the best pick in the NFC West. I actually think the plan is pretty straightforward. Honestly, to me, it just kind of feels like we need a running back. Here's this running back. We take the running back. I think it actually makes sense. I just don't think it's optimal. But yeah. It's not like the Arroyo pick to me. The Arroyo pick to me kind of made no sense. I don't know what the plan was there. Milrow, yeah. I didn't make a lot of sense to me. Yeah. But this makes sense. I just don't love it.
Yeah, 100%. This makes a lot more sense than those other ones did, and you can see why the plan, where they're going with it and why they did it, and he fits to this system as far as his running style goes, which will help matters. So, yeah. And it is still the best pick in the NFC West here. I will agree with that.
I would say so. Like, I haven't seen a happy Rams fan yet today.
No, sir. No, sir.
Keelan, thank you for the $4.99. I'm happy with that pick. I'd rather take a whack at running back with what that room looks like this year. Only other option was Coleman. Well, you had like Mike Washington there. Like, maybe we saw something we didn't like with him. I know that he was a very polarizing player.
Yeah.
Was that it though? I guess they're the Penn State guys. I like those guys, by the way.
Emma Johnson, but I think Keon's point's right. I think it is a little limited there. On that point of it, if you're not going here and you do need some help at the back position, there isn't a lot of other help to be had there on that. I think it's a fair point.
Yeah. Tiza, thank you for the $2. Great pick, but the position. Still happy though. I mean, look, I don't mind spending high draft capital on a running back. To me, that's better than paying big money for a running back. Like, I think this pick is better than making Ken Walker one of the top 5 highest paid running backs in the league. I would say that.
Yeah, I'm on record as saying that I think if their strategy from Schneider's standpoint on this is that I understand I got to look at running backs as a devalued position, much like I got to look at safeties as a devalued position. And then how do I respond to that while still looking to find talented players for this position? Working that creative way to kind of both acknowledge, but then also seek out good talent. And John is finding a little bit of that middle ground here. The other teams would kind of go this way or that way. And I think he's being creative and imaginative in that approach to do it this way, where maybe every 4 years you're just flipping out a back for an early round pick and you're saying that's going to be the cost of doing business, and we never end up paying them, which we know is not good money spent. And you know that when you get a running back on his rookie contract, that's when they're most maximized. So this is where you can understand his approach to this and how it fits to running backs and getting the most out of them and not overspending. So I can understand that approach with it. I get that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Keelan, thank you for the $4.99. I have faith in Mike to turn low-level talent on D into good folks. Our number one need is running back by far in my head. Sharps don't going to be ready till December. I mean, we kind of tried to do the whole low-level talent thing in 2024 with Mike, and it did not work well. Like, we tried to get by with some ill-fitting linebackers, and it was a disaster. So I don't know if it's that simple.
Yeah, I'm not sure as either on that. And I think that while the running back is a little bit of a need here with this, Keon, the one thing with this too is we get back to when the driving force is, well, we don't have this, so we have to do this now because we don't have this thing. So we have to do this one thing over here rather than let's think creatively about all the ways we could maybe add this running back. Like a Jets or Miami team's not willing to move an A-chain right now. Would they be willing to move it before the trade deadline? Because we know both those teams are going to be in Loserville next year and nowhere near the playoffs. I think there's a good chance. I think there's a good chance another running back could come up to be a team like, let's say the Colts, for instance. They don't fit up to snuff. A Jonathan Taylor, could that guy become available at the trade deadline if that Colts team underperforms, which we know could be very much a possibility. I think you could also find yourself in a position of, as an alternative on this, looking at as, well, could we get through the first couple of weeks of the season and then go get a guy? I think you possibly could have as an alternative on this one to that direction as well. Because it comes back to, well, if you operate from that point of desperation, fear, well, if we don't do this, what else we're going to, it doesn't lead you usually to making the right pick to the player. It leads you picking a player that will fill the hole, but does the hole really get fully filled versus you just getting a player and just having a spot, kind of filled in there. And there's a little of that going on. It's not all the way here because there is talent with Price. He's deserving of being the second back taken in this draft. He's clearly the second best back in this draft. There's no doubt about that part. But that'd be just the one part that I would wonder on that in my mind when looking at this pick.
Yeah, or you could have done something in free agency so it didn't get to this point. You could have signed the Robinson guy from San Francisco. You could have signed a couple of other guys that would have been okay and not left you in a spot where you're like, we have to get a running back. Like, who's the guy who got shot? What's his name? Brian Robinson?
That's right.
Like, you sign him, maybe you're like, okay, we're good at running back for the time being, and we don't have to take the running back. Now, I've been told by somebody that they had Price's BPA on their board. And look, if they had Price as number one on their board at that point, then, good for them. I can't say I agree with that assessment, but maybe they really did just think Price is that good. Maybe.
They might have. I will not question if they say that is, then that's, fair enough. It's hard to quite see that with the players that were available there, but maybe they're just that in love with him as a player, which I love to hear.
Yeah, you're not going to tell me that Price is a better player than TJ Parker. You're not going to sell me on that.
There's a variety of guys that were remaining that would be tough sells for me too on that.
Yeah,
to your point.
Hunter, thank you for the $1.99. What are we doing tomorrow? I'm going to the gym tomorrow. I'll tell you that.
Well, I think you're definitely going to be addressing the secondary at some point tomorrow. Whether it is a safety or corner, you're definitely probably grabbing one of those two. Was still not able to trade back today, so you're stuck with your picks that you have for tomorrow as far as you don't have any extras. So I think definitely secondary would be one of my lead points that I think that they're going to look to attack, be it a cornerback or safety.
Yeah. If Gennings Dunker is still there at 64, which actually seems reasonable at this point because he's been slipping lately, how would you feel about that?
Yeah, I love Jennings is one of my guys in this draft, man. So if you get him at 64, that'd be, I think, a awesome value, and I would celebrate that pick tremendously.
Mm-hmm. What if you get down to like the second, you trade back a little bit into the early third, and then you get Denise Sutton from Penn State?
I'm not as big on the edges in this class, man. I think what you mentioned about going for a Fowler and a Clowney, that makes your edge group better for next year. Which I would draft a guy right now, and it's like we're waiting on that for a year or two to get the production out of him, probably. All right. And I like Sutton with the upside, but I just think you got to more now maximize this edge group to get returns now, especially when the price is so cheap for the vet edges that are out there.
Yeah, there are a couple of fallers too. Like what if like Zion Young is there at 64 somehow? And I don't think he will be, but I would have a hard time turning that one down. Anthony Hill, he's been slipping lately. If he gets down to 64, I'm jumping on that. And people will freak out because we drafted a linebacker. I don't care.
I don't care on that either. You have Ernest Jones going in the final year of his deal. So, and there are only one more year after this year on the deal with Drake Thomas. So I wouldn't get concerned with that. That's take the best players. That's what you want to do in the draft. It isn't about filling holes. It's about taking the best players. We come back to like, it is complicated and there's a lot of moving parts. Value versus need though becomes kind of the line. Which side are you leaning? Which side are you on? Are you operating off value or are you operating off need? Mm-hmm. And I understand that there are needs and I understand there are holes and we got to get this, there's this thing and we got this, but that's not the pathway to success, not just for our Seahawks in recent history, but for NFL teams across the board. That's not the pathway for success. You want to be operating by value. Who's the best, most valuable guy you got on your board as much as you possibly can. I know sometimes it's impossible. We saw a lot of teams in this first round with their need for tackle. It made it impossible for them to operate in that fashion. But that's not the pathway to success. It's not even really a debatable point on this. It's just not a pathway to drafting success for any team across the board. And it's proven true so very often over and over and over again.
Taker, thank you for the $2. Can't wait to not extend price in 4 years. So there's a very good chance by the time we get there, we won't want to extend him. And that's no knock on him, but extending a running back, you better be special.
Fifth year option, Taker. Fifth year option.
Yeah, that's also going to be on the table as well. But yeah, you better be Marshall Faulk if we're going to extend you, man. You better be an all-timer.
Yeah, I definitely see it. I think John's going to have a hard time moving in the future. We saw this with Walker down. I think it will be the case we go in the future that it's going to be very hard to pay guys because of the lack of success he's had in paying guys. And I think that Walker kind of showed that a little bit as maybe he's moving away off that a little bit. And maybe he'll just be drafting guys going through, you know?
I think it's the right way to go. I think that's the process.
Yeah. I'm okay with it.
Spencer Smith, thank you for the $4.99. How willing are either of you to walk the line on dipping into next year's 12 pick haul to find just a little more value to close this year's draft out? So this would be taking a pick that you have in 2027 and using it to move up in this draft.
What I would prefer to rather do is have more of a commitment level to the trade deadline as a market opportunity. I think that you're going to be able to take with the way the value of next year's draft is looking to be souped up. I think that as you get to the deadline, those picks will carry more weight for players that you can turn back for in return. And there's a good chance that this trade deadline, I think that we're going to see more of what we saw last year, Brendan, with rather than being a league of parity next year, I think there's going to be more of a league again next year of the haves and the have-nots, and that the have-nots are going to be more willing than ever to move at the deadline. And then if that's the case, then have those picks ready to be able to go and get a really good player at that point. Plus be able to assess where your team is at coming off of a long Super Bowl year. It's hard to repeat. Let's see where the bodies are at that point. Let's see where everything's kind of standing at that point. On top of, if you don't make a move at the deadline, you can always use those picks then before next year's draft and making a move into free agency and trying to bounce around that way. So I really want to try to hold on to those picks if I can at this point.
Yeah, I will say if we get to like the middle of the second tomorrow and Avion Terrell is still there or TJ Parker is still there, that's when I might go like, okay, let's make a move here. Those are first round talents that are here somehow. Let's make something happen. But overall, I'm trying to preserve my draft capital for 2027 because that's going to be a good draft. And I'm trying to hoard picks there. Yeah.
I wouldn't be mad at it if they did that tomorrow at all. So it's just a general approach. Unless something's really smacking you in the face, then you just kind of hunker down and stick and pick a little bit. But if something's there and the market opportunity is right and the cost is not going to be great, then maybe it's worthwhile to do so.
Jeffrey, thank you for the $2. How do you feel about trading for one of the Cardinals running backs? Would they be willing to trade with us given the fact that we're division rivals? Would be my first question.
Yeah, I mean, you're locked and loaded with running backs at this point. Emmanuel Wilson and McIntosh and Holani and Charbonnet and Jadarian Price. I think you're pretty well suited. You got Jacardia Wright still on the roster. So I think they're probably pretty set at running back at this point. And Cardinals, what are they going to do at running back? I don't know. Maybe they're rolling with all four of them. You know, two of those guys got a recent injury history. So
wishbone. They're going to run the wishbone, yeah.
51 personnel.
Love it. Yeah, but I mean, I do like Trey Benson. I would not mind trading for him in a vacuum, but I think we've made our bed with running backs.
Yeah, I don't think we're looking to move him in. From Cardinal perspective, you move Benson, his value couldn't be lower at this point in doing that. So it's why do it from your perspective.
Jeffrey, thank you for the 5. Whatever the Rams GM is smoking that made him draft Ty Simpson, I'm going to buy 8 of them tomorrow. Well, we all know what happened. He was using ChatGPT, clearly.
Yeah, trying to take advantage of that power of that AI. ChatGPT said the value of quarterback is too good not to pass.
That is actually a ChatGPT pick, isn't it? That is exactly what they would tell you to do. Stafford is 38.79 years old.
Oh, they would be like, he has an 87% chance of his back going out next year.
Yeah. You did hear the John Lynch or the Niners guy or whatever say that he uses AI sometimes to help make decisions, right?
I didn't. No, that's pretty not cool.
Yeah, that was interesting. Like there was I can't remember the guy's name, but there was like a U.S. U.S. military general who admitted that he used AI to help make his decisions as well. And I'm like, okay, you got to fire that guy now, right? You got to like dishonorably discharge him. Come on.
Yeah, come on now. Let's not be using AI for that stuff.
Use AI for like fun stuff. Use AI for like making a picture of somebody dressed like a hot dog.
Exactly.
Or make your YouTube thumbnails with it. Mm-hmm.
That's what it's really for.
Mm-hmm. William, thank you for the 2. Hey, B, did the Rams take a bong hit? LOL, I think.
I can't think of what they're doing here. I just literally, it befuddles my mind unless, I mean, I know that they love Ty Simpson, but it's just like everything into this just does not up to how the Rams operate for the most part. They're usually a very smart organization that doesn't do things that just are blatantly on the surface of it, just so hard to, I mean, kind of excuse or explain. What are you thinking? You're this close, and you've got this much time before it all ends, and you're going to take a pick for years down the future. It doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me in the least on this. And I think that Jeffrey was mentioned earlier that maybe it's a McVay tied to Stafford thing, which very well could be the case. And then Snead's like, well, what do you care anyway? I got to set this up for after you leave as it is. So I'm going to take advantage while I do. Guys are going to be in the late 20s now while Stafford's here. So I got to get the quarterback while I can. But
I would have rather waited. I would have rather waited till the 3rd and taken Drew Allar than Ty Simpson in the 13th overall. And I don't like LR very much either, but that's better than Simpson at 13.
I agree. It's about like the better value. It comes back to always the value concept on this. Where's the better value? And I think with Simpson, you're reaching for a need for this at this point. I don't need for like they need to have a quarterback replacement, but you're more reaching to go get that quarterback in the future than you are like, this is the best player we have on our board at this point. And it is pretty egregious for the Rams at that spot where they took him on that. I mean, I was talking about Simpson taking the top 16 from a lot of people, content creators across the board, and all of them were rolling their eyes at me going, that would be so stupid for any team to do that. There's no way he goes that early in the draft because everyone thought it was going to be back at 30s and Cardinals would come up into 27 or something to try to get him. But like it is really beyond the pale as far as the selection goes, and wild because it's such a deviation for the Rams from how they operate so smartly across the board through all the rest of their moves more often than not.
I will admit though, if you look at their history of like early round picks in the Les Snead era, it's not great. Like Verse was good, but other than that, it's kind of like And I'm not talking about just first round picks because they haven't had a lot, but I'm talking about whatever the first pick is in the draft when their pick comes up. It's been kind of shaky.
Well, you could make an argument. It's not maybe the strength of where Snead lies, that he's a better guy as a trader and finding value within that with the picks mentality and going that direction. So, or better drafting into sort of more of the day 3 where they've been able to find value at times there, or better at spending in free agency and finding value contracts like they did with a Quinn Lake or Cameron Curl. Maybe not Quinn Lake, but Cameron Curl. I think they drafted Quinn Lake.
Yeah.
But
they drafted Kitchens, right? The Miami guy.
It was Kitchens, and I think they got Curl in there. But you did bring in a guy like Curl on a nice little free agent contract from Washington, and he fit right into that secondary. So it is a bit of an odd one here for the Rams, and maybe it's a bong toke, which is the reason that they did this. But it was one that I did not see. I remember a couple of weeks ago talking to Jake Elamo. He's like, "Oh, that's just a smoke screen. It's all just they're just trying to get teams to trade up. That's all they're doing." But no, they were really that interested, and I couldn't be more blown away, man. You moved off of Goff and Snead. Let's just say this is McVay's leaves with Stafford. You as Snead got to oversee your coach coming to you and saying, hey, this guy's a good quarterback. It's not that he's a bad quarterback purely. He just doesn't have enough to take us over the top. And then you saw your coach proven right on that with the Stafford trade. And now you're going to go right back into the bucket of finding a quarterback who has deficiencies to his game, hoping you can maximize out the rest of the roster around him to overcome that. And that's where, to me, I don't see how they're arriving at this conclusion from their perspective.
Yeah, I don't get it, but I'm pretty happy about it.
I'm overjoyed by it.
Chase, thank you. Chase, thank you for the 5. I'm fine with this pick, but don't let a fairly so-so pick distract us from making fun of the Rams.
Oh, no.
You know, this 2026 has been rough on those guys. Like, I know they made it to the NFC Championship game, but they really had to limp to get there. They lose the NFC Championship game. You've got all this Puka stuff, and now this pick. Like, it's not been a kind 2026 to those guys.
I do wonder a little bit about that 2-point conversion having maybe broken their brain fully, Brendan. You know, having them bringing up rule changes and picking overdrafting quarterbacks, and it just sent him into a spin cycle, put him on tilt.
I don't know how else to put it, but hey, hopefully they keep it up, and I'm much happier with this than them taking somebody like Sadiq or Lemon or Omar Cooper. There were a lot of things they could have done that would have made me sad. Even Ruben Bain, as much as Ruben Bain has become like persona non grata, there's a world where he becomes like one of the 3 best players from this draft class easily.
I think he will be, number one. And number 2, let's think about the cascading effects of what the Rams could do with that, Brendan, because right now with the cap space as far as they have it sitting, they have to sign Avila, they have to sign Puka Nacua, they have to sign Kobe Turner, and then they have to sign Avila. Did I already say Avila?
Yeah, you said Verse?
Oh, no, not Verse. So it's Young versus next year. So it's just this offseason still to be done this offseason. It's Turner, it's Puka,
Avila.
It's Young, and Avila. So think about it. There's 4 guys there. All of them are going to be making over probably $17.5 million per year. All of them. With Puka at the top point of that at $43 million. So think about this as, what if you took Byron Young and you flipped him for a 2nd-round pick to a team that would then pay him? You bring in Ruben Bain. Now you pick up an extra 2nd-round pick in this draft as well as having now Bain on the cheap rookie contract. So now you can afford Verse, because can you afford Verse paying Young $25 million per year and then having to pay Verse $33 on what he's going to want? I mean, you could maybe pull it off, but do you want to do that for alternative options? I think that would have been a scarier proposition for the Rams to take that approach. Because you could argue that they might even be better at edge with Bain than Young. So you've actually upgraded the position, and then you get the extra 2nd-round pick too.
Yeah, well, I know that there was some off-field stuff that came out about Bain over the last week that really kind of drove him down boards, I think. I think he would have been a top 10 pick all day, and then that stuff happened. But there's still a part of me that's just like terrified of him, what he could be in this league. And I know there were red flags, but I would have had a very bad feeling if he ended up in LA.
I would have too. I would have been scared to death. To me, Bain and Downs were the scariest propositions to land with the Rams in this draft, with how this draft kind of fell. I was like, ooh, I don't want either of these two. And with Bain, I understand the short arms, but there's a difference between having short arms and the short arms actually showing up on tape as this clear liability to the play. And they don't with Bain. Everybody talks about it as a measurement, but no, I can show you with Cassius Howell where the short arms come into effect in a major way. With Bain, they don't. And the reason is because he's not just a power guy with short arms. He's a power guy who has dip and bend. So he can go to those counters. You're loading up on his power, and now suddenly he dips around you. It gives him an ability to give him some of those counters to keep those tackles off guard on what's coming, snap in and snap out, which allows him to be all that much more effective, in my opinion. Right.
So that didn't happen. So it could have been really bad, but it ended up being pretty awesome. So I'm honestly, I think that the Rams pick made me happier than the Seahawks pick made me disappointed. I couldn't. The high from that Rams pick made me not even really all that bothered by the pick, because it's not like our pick was bad, but you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Yeah. I mean, it's where I hope people out there listening, because I think they sometimes can hear us on this and it gets driven into an extreme direction when we're really not trying to drive into an extreme direction on this. We're just trying to analyze the pick in full. And at the end of the day, I'm fine with it. I'm not going to there's about 8 other picks I can look at over the last 6-7 years of the Hawks where I'm like, I was much more out of sorts with those picks than this one in particular. So it's a pick that's got a good chance for success. It's not some blatantly awful pick. We probably operated the best out of the 4 teams in this division in that first round, and how everybody went about their business. So it's just that it's the full story, essentially. What's the full story of the situation with it? And it's all of that.
I will say, I think the Niners got good value on their trade backs. So, tip of the cap to them.
I do. I just come back to, man, you know what they've done with all those compensatory picks over the years, man. Your Latu tight ends out of Alabama's, and, Jake Moody, kicker you took in the 3rd round. Like, they haven't exactly been making a lot of hay while the sun's shining when they're picking in that area of the draft. Especially for this draft, it's kind of weak.
Yeah, that is a good point. My understanding is they really liked Malachi Lawrence, and Dallas picked him up, and they kind of just lost interest.
I could see that. I definitely could see that being a bit of the way that played out for them.
Mm-hmm. Spencer, thank you for the $4.99. I'm sure someone referenced this already, and just to be clear, I love Jake, cool dude, but his Ty Simpson reaction had me on the couch dying laughing. Yeah, that was a tough scene.
Yeah, poor Jake. And look, my heart goes out to him on this, because there's nothing like, Brendan, having a player that you're like, please don't take this guy. This can't be the pick. Don't have this be the pick. It cannot be the pick. And then you're leading up and you're just like, no way. And then it happens. It's like, he was struggling with it. So heart goes out to Jake on this one. I can understand his frustration with it. It's valid frustration. You're really confused by what your team's doing on this one, because it just doesn't seem to add up as to why at this moment this move makes sense. It really is one I think the Rams are going to come back to look at, like, this could be a move that ends up costing you a true chance at a world championship. And that relation I made, Aaron Rodgers with Jordan Love a couple years ago, getting so mad about that. Well, remember that Packer team, Brendan? I mean, and how close they came, and the Niner game coming in their house, and the championship, how close that game was. Having one more player, having one more pass rusher, having one more receiver that Aaron Rodgers could have thrown to at that time could have made the difference. If we get into this year, Brendan, Devontae Adams has his hamstring tear off the bone in week 2, and now all you got's Puka. No more Tutu Atwell, and it's Mumfield and Puka out there. Do you think about, boy, what Makai would sure feel good right now? It sure make me feel a lot more warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, or Sadiq, and Sadiq's kind of a glorified receiver anyway. He's much more of a receiver than a tight end to me. So that would have been more fun. And hell, if you need to move one of your tight ends, you can. Like, it's not that big a deal. Just dump Colby Parkinson.
Yeah, I mean, the tough part is he's an H-back, and you got Ferguson's a pure H-back, and those guys both have the same kind of skill set where they're H-backs that don't particularly block well. So they're like your traditional H-back types, and so you have a lot of redundant. You can get away with having 2 inline guys, but I don't know if you can get away with having 2 H-back guys, if that makes sense. I don't see a lot of teams in the league that are rocking tight end cores that have 2 H-backs. I see a lot that have the 2 inlines and 1 H-back. So that's where I think it wouldn't have quite made sense. You could do some slot stuff with him, to your point, a little bit with Sadiq, but I just thought with that was a little bit of a glut of too many tight ends, especially when you put Higbee, I think, on another extension this offseason, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe they did. You're right about that. Yeah, that is actually a little bit difficult. So we went a little bit longer than I thought, so we will be right back after this message from our joint sponsor. If you like sports, the best way to make them better and more exciting is using Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. Prize Picks, all you got to do is pick more or less on your favorite players' projections and build lineups with a few taps. It's the daily fantasy stuff, but it's made super easy over there. Whatever sport you're into, give it a shot. And right now, Prize Picks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All you have to do is use promo code HMA. I've had a great time on Prize Picks so far. It makes this daily fantasy thing very easy, and it makes watching the games way more exciting. Be sure to check out the social feeds feature so you can share lineups with your friends and tail partners, or even fade their picks. Right now, Prize Picks is offering odds on the NFL draft. You have who's going to go where, what each team is going to do, how many of each position is going to go in each round, and so on and so on. Get on over to Prize Picks. Take advantage of that. So download Prize Picks today, America's #1 sports app, and remember to use the promo code HMA. And remember, always gamble responsibly. All right, so I think that's going to go ahead and basically wrap us up for the night. We took Jadarian Price. It's okay. It's okay. That's kind of how I feel about it. I get why we did it. I think he could have done better, but I do think that he is going to help this team in 2026.
Yeah, I think that he's got a great chance to be running backs, and what we've learned about them is that they have to have certain things set up for them to find success in this league, and that whatever their talent may be, if those things are not taken care of, you're not going to be able to best maximize those backs, whatever their talent may stand at. And so that case with Jadarian, he's got, if you got 5 major things from, continuity in offensive line, along with good talent and functional receiver positions and a quarterback that can keep the defense honest and the defense that gets those offenses off the field and doesn't allow you to score every time. It's like you take all of this stuff into account. You've really taken care of that across the board on this team for whatever running back's toting the rock. And so a guy like him should be very well in a position to be maximized to the ultimate for whatever he is going to bring to the field. And that in itself helps this pick out to be much, much more successful in the future because of it.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the plan is that we will reconvene in about a little less than 24 hours to do this all over again after day 2 of the draft. We have 2 picks, 64, 96. Maybe we move up, maybe we move down. Who knows? But we will be here to talk about it. And then we have day 3. We're not going to reconvene that evening because we only have one day 3 pick and we'll be very tired because that is a long day. But I will still be streaming it over on my channel. You'll be with the syndicate, right?
That's right. We're rocking over there. We got a bunch of guests coming in on day 3 into the channel. So we'll be rolling up over there.
Very cool. I think Cliff Avrill's announcing our picks tomorrow, by the way. So that'll be fun. Haven't seen Cliff in a while.
Let's go.
And Jordan, thank you for this last super chat to send us out. How funny would it be if Price ends up being better than Love? I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Love, but I do think he'll be a good player in this league. I think that he's a more complete back than Price for sure.
Yeah, I think that there's a real possibility here, Jordan, about the fact that with the landing zone and going to Arizona versus Price coming to Seattle, I mean, we want to go to productivity and who might end up having more yards in a career because of some of this at play. There's a good chance with Jadarian for where he's going. It's very rare as a running back you can come to a team that's got all 5 offensive line starters returning, and you are solidified across the board in every way to allow you not to have to be a place where the defense can concentrate on you and taking you away, but you become this guy that's kind of the lost man amongst this sea of very talented players. And I think he's got a position to be in that Love is not going to benefit from that. Love's going to be having a team playing from behind a lot. Love's going to be dealing with an offensive line that's not particularly good. We have no idea if LaFleur really can roll that offense out at all. Jacoby Brissett's your quarterback. Your defense is probably going to allow a lot of points. Like, it's all turned in the opposite direction for Love as far as those chances for success. And I think it will, to your point, Jordan, impact this situation.
But Jacoby Brissett's going to hold out, man. That's what they're saying. Like he I want more money. They got their quarterback's Clayton Tune.
Yeah, it's just, again, the Cardinal organization. I've said it many times. Like, they are bad for a reason. And this move they made today, and the fact that the Jacoby Brissett thing is even reaching a point where he's coming out into the media, Brendan, isn't it? Even though he's coming out and squawking out in that way, that should have been figured out between you and Jacoby as you went into the offseason. I sit down with Jacoby and I'm like, here's how we're going to do this. You're going to get a chance to actually start an NFL team, which you are not going to get anywhere else right now. You're going to get that this next year to put your value for another contract next year to actually go make some money. But you don't come back to us here and tell us you need another 10 million this year. I'm making 9. I need another 10. We're not doing that. If that's what you want to do, then we're putting you out the door right now. You go be a backup in New England again. That's what you want to do with that. But they didn't do that, of course, because they're not checking their P's and Q's. They're not dotting their I's. They're not crossing their T's, Brendan. And so they just go, it'll be fine. He's being a starter. He'll recognize that no, he comes back out and wants money. It's like, yeah, you guys can't help yourself of kind of doing the dumb thing, just not operating with any sort of sense of, again, vision or trying to outlook this thing in a way that's really covering every base and thinking about all the items at play that you got to be thinking about. And that's what you should have been doing with that, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's nice to have one team in the division that can't get their stuff together because these
that's true.
Other 3 teams, they seem to have it together.
That's a good point. You got to have some of these, and the more the merrier, hopefully, as we go forward, because I'll take that feast factor all day if we can get that.
Yep. All right. So thank you, everybody, for showing up. We had like 600 people in here at one point earlier. We still got about 500. Thank you so much for coming out. Brandon, thank you for doing this with me. I know it's late. I know we got stuff to do tomorrow, but thank you for doing this with me.
No, I had a great time. If you guys can do me this favor on either side for me and Brandon on this, because we're trying to get this stuff. There's a lot of hot content out there right now on the YouTube. If you guys can hit that like button on either side you might be watching this on. Really helps out pushing this video out on the algorithm, is for people that are looking for action on the Jadarian Price pick and looking for breakdowns on that. So hitting that like button. I know we ask you guys to do a lot, sub up, but it's a big help to us here on these channels and helping us grow and just expand.
That's right. So we're doing it again tomorrow, guys. We got 2 picks. See you then. But until then, these are still your Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. They picked last. They picked last today for a reason. There's a very good reason why they picked last. And that's ultimately what it's all about. We do this stuff in the offseason. We talk about the draft, but we're not here to root for a team that drafts. We're here to root for a team that wins. And right now, we have the team that wins better than anybody else. So don't forget that. I'm certainly not forgetting that, even as they make a pick that I was not completely enamored with. And right now, John Schneider deserves the benefit of the doubt. So,
hell yes, he does.
Say it, go to bed, and we'll do this again tomorrow. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.